Hey guys, Marmalade here. What is up, everybody? A little different area here on the PCT, but yeah, this video is not a typical one I do where I show all the beauty. I'll show a little bit, kind of show you where I'm hiking to. And it's starting to sprinkle now, but it's March 23rd, and I'm calling this video Rethinking Things. And you know, I come out with a lot of good ideas, and I share with you some of my gear stuff, food things, you know, things I've learned on the PCT. But part of why I go out on these short trips is to try out things and see if it works or not. And when I say rethinking things, this video is going to be a little bit more talking and really not too much hiking, but it's about reevaluating my quest to get lighter and more compact. I'm not changing that, but how I do it is when I'm rethinking. So I showed you in my last video when I camped my tarp system with a bug net. I didn't bring it that time, but a bug net and a ground sheet. So I could either cowboy camp with a net, or a tarp with or without a bug net. So when I get to camp and set up, I'm gonna go over the pros and cons of it and why I've decided to go away from it and what I may go to. So without further ado, we'll show you a little more of this track. We're at about mile 112 by the 79, where you go under the bridge on the PCT, and I'm hiking 0.9 miles to a really nice campground, one of my favorites. It's not supposed to be raining anymore, but it's sprinkling. It may rain. That's okay, because I'm trying out. I have a kind friend that lent me his name's Brad. I don't know if he wants to use his name, but he's such a kind friend and such a good friend. Thank you, Brad. I've been eyeing this tent. I talked to the hiking Rev, who's my friend who has one, and being tall, I was thinking I may not fit in it, but it's very light, very efficient every way, and I'll go over it in a little bit when I get to the camp and set up. But Brad was kind enough to let me borrow his to try it before I spend a lot more money on it. So I'll go over what the tent is. It's not going to be a gear review. I'm just going to talk about the pros and cons of a tarp and why I may go to this tent. So now that's it. Let's get to camp before it pours on us. Yeesh. All right, guys, look at that. I'm gonna get on with this video. It's just kind of funny. It was pouring rain. It's not supposed to be raining. Rain this morning was supposed to stop for the next week. And coming up here in the mountains towards Warner Springs, it was raining all the way to about a mile away. Then, as you saw, it sprinkled a little bit when I was walking out here, but no big deal for the mile that I came out here. And as soon as I started setting up the tent, it started raining enough to where it was significant. So I had to kind of hurry and put the tent up, get all my stuff in there, in here. And you know, I wanted to sit outside in nature and enjoy, even though it's getting cold, I wanted to enjoy out there. But I'm kind of stuck in the tent right now. But in a way, it's good to test the tent out. I'll be in here longer. I'll get up early and get back to the car. But yeah, so the theme of this video is rethinking things. So I wanted to give you the pros and cons. Try not to make this video too long, but about the tarp and kind of what my thinking is. And really, I don't ever consider anything a failure. I try things. Many people love the tarp system. Someday I may even try it again. I don't know. But right now, for the kind of hiking I'm doing, there's some things that happened that didn't really work for me. The pros are, of course, I like the lightweight. It was I had a bug net that was 2.9 ounces. The Altiplex DCF ground sheet was 2.6 ounces. The tarp was DCF, of course, from Z-Packs. That was 7.1 ounces. I think altogether, what is that about? It was about 13, I think right around 13 or 14 ounces. This tent that I'll talk about in a minute is the same weight. So if I go to this, I'm not losing anything, and the physical size of it is the same as those three parts too. So going back to the pros, of course I like the lightness of it, how compact it was. It was really neat. I've never really been in one, especially being translucent like this. When I was under it, and it's a green color, uh, it's so wide. It's 8.5 feet wide. So off center, even though it's kind of pitched at an A-frame, I was probably 4 feet, or 3.5 feet extra on either side of me. So I felt very well protected. And I'm 6'3", and I bought a 10-foot tarp, so I have almost 2 feet on either end of me, on the open end. So if it were to rain, I've got 2 foot of clearance not to get wet. But I really liked the way it felt and the openness of it, but the protection too at the same time of a tarp. And obviously you could set it lower and higher and all that. So there's a few things I really like, but a few things became evident, and some of my friends said I should try it more, but there were things that aren't going to change if I try it more. I may have liked it more as I went along, but it still wouldn't have fixed the things that or changed the things that I had an issue with. And the first one was, I'm going to save the most important one to last. First one was, I'm a tall guy and I'm also older. I'm 60, so I eat dinner, and it's starting to get dark when I did that last video. And I set it up, the A-frame of the tarp, pretty low. The sides were about 10 inches off the ground, but not super low. It was just kind of in the middle. At the highest peak, where, well, anyway, so it was getting cold. I wanted to get in my tarp in my quilt. And because I've never used one, I didn't really factor in that, how do I get in this thing? The open end by the head was probably 2.5, 3 feet off the ground, but I'm 6 foot tall, and the ground was muddy kind of and wet. And it's like, and I try to keep my clothes and my gear fairly clean. So I'm like, how do I get down this low and get in there? And I'm going to be going head first towards the pillow, but I've got to somehow swing around and get my feet in it. And so the only thing I could think of was to get my Z-Seat sit pad and pulled that right by, and I kneeled down right by my head, and then I eventually got my butt on it. But it was kind of hard to do, and the whole time I'm hitting my head on this, and it wasn't wet at the time. But if it's wet, like this is kind of damp from the rain. If it was wet, I would have got wet, whether I was getting in the tent or getting out at the end of the day or during the morning or whatever. So it just took a lot of spinning around and contortions, really, and hitting the tent a lot to get in. Maybe that would improve over time, but I was like, wow, I didn't realize it's so hard to get in this thing, and it's because I'm tall. So that was one thing. The other thing that was the most important thing to me was, I don't know why I didn't realize this, but I got the bigger of the longer and wider of the two sizes because of my size, and I felt it gave me much more clearance, especially on stormy nights. So then when I set it up, I went, holy smokes. Where I set it up at Barrel Springs is wide open, but this tarp is 10 feet long, and then I put 8-foot leads on the head and foot and the open ends. But when you pull them down and you cinch them up, I probably had 5 foot or so, 5 or 6 feet on either end. So with the tarp and the guy lines, I needed at least a 20-foot long space, if not more. And then you go how wide it is. It's 8.5 feet, but a little bit shorter or narrower because there's an A-frame. It's not flat. But then you have 2-3 foot of guy lines on either side. So you need like 10, 12 feet wide by 20 plus feet long. And so I was like, holy smokes, I didn't realize, how big of a space it takes. And that's not realistic on the trail. It really isn't. My triplex that I've been using for years, I struggle with that sometimes. The vestibules make it really wide. I'll have to sometimes, here's the vestibule, I'll have to just let it hang flat because there's bushes here and I can only have room for one vestibule and one opening. So, I just realized that I had some things I liked, but it's just not for me. So, and then some other things that played in the factor were, later on we get another month or two into the year, I'm going to go over my plans. I'm trying to finish the PCT. There's all the snow. So if something were to happen where I couldn't get where I need to go on trail, I may try a different place of the trail or go to a different trail for a while and come back. So if so, some of the trails and some of the places I was thinking of going, I was watching, and like the Sierras, they have thunderstorms and mosquitoes and just all wind, all kinds of stuff. And I just realized I don't want to be in a tarp in that stuff. So I want to be, so my predicament is, how do I stay light, be really light, compact, have something not big, yet keep me from being not exposed to the elements. This has a bug net, so I won't, if there's mosquitoes, I can get out of the mosquitoes. With the tarp, sometimes I've heard from people, if rains really hard, you can actually just kind of almost flood underneath you where you're sleeping. So I don't want to deal with that. So after a lot of research, and as I said earlier, I talked to the Hiking Rev, hey Rev, if you see this, and asked him about it. And then I also talked to Brad, my friend that loaned me this tent, and I'm going to try it out. I'm leaning towards it. It's not a gear review, but what it is the Z-Packs, not the Altaplex, but the Plex Solo. And really the only difference is the Altaplex has a little higher roof, but this is plenty high. There's still about a foot above my head. And one of the things that I wrestle with is the Altaplex is made for a taller person, but it's the same length, so I don't get any length by it. If you guys followed me for a long time, you know they re-released the Altaplex in 2020. I got it. Darwin announced it, and I got one right away because I thought it was genius. So my struggles are, why would I get one now that's similar if that didn't work? Well, I've told some friends that how I hike and what I carry and my perspective is totally different. So when I got that tent, the main reason I got the Altaplex back actually was because all the line locks, I had a defective tent. The line locks were letting go. So when I wake up in the morning, my tent was mostly collapsed on me. All my stakes were still on the ground, but the line locks holding the lines were letting go. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure it out. Z-Packs couldn't. So they took it back. They were kind enough to take it back. And that's when I got the Triplex in 2020. So why would I go to it now? Well, it's different. I carried a lot more gear, a lot more. So one of the problems I had in this tent was, in the Altaplex, it's basically the same tent, just taller, is I didn't have enough room for my stuff. So now I have a lot less stuff, and I'm looking here, and I have plenty of room. The other thing was, I always brought sleep base layers, a bottom and a top to sleep in. I felt it kept me warmer, but also it's nice to, after being gross all day hiking, to put something clean on, and also kept my quilt and my air mattress from getting filthy from my body. So I've graduated. I don't bring those anymore. I've saved a lot of weight in that. I sleep in my hiking clothes, which I love, because if you guys have ever had wet or cold clothes in your tent at night and you're sleeping in your sleep clothes and you have to change into those, basically freeze, take everything you have on off, and put the cold clothes on and try to warm up, it's pain. So I have my, like my sun hoodie and my hiking shorts, and then I'll switch my socks to tomorrow's pair when I go to bed, like tonight, if I'm hiking tomorrow, the rinsed out clean pair. And so I have the socks are already warm on my feet. I literally just have to put my shoes on. So one of the issues with a small tent was when I was changing clothes, I needed a lot more room, and I would hit all this stuff, but I don't need that anymore. Now when I get up, I pack up my pack a little bit, but I don't change any clothes. If anything, I maybe put on a jacket or take off a jacket, and that's it, and I get out. So just my reality and what I do here is a lot different. And so I'm gonna give it a shot. It is tight, but I don't know if it's tight because it's tight or because I'm used to a triplex, which is 3 times this big. It's like a mansion. So we'll see. I'm not sure if I'll come back on tonight. Maybe I actually brought my stove. Oh, by the way, I could have just, I hiked a mile. I could have just brought the stuff I needed. I brought everything I bring because I want to see real world if it's going to fit in here or not. So if I bring half the stuff, then of course it's going to seem spacious. So that's the test. So I brought a lot of stuff, like a water filter and things I'm not even going to use. I'm carrying all the water I need. So yeah, I brought a meal, and I don't know, I'm gonna cook a nice warm meal and watch some TV and just relax. And I'm by the river. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but see if you can hear it. But it's big, big, big. The biggest I've seen it since when I went out through here in 19. So that's it. Thanks for listening to me. Like I said, it's not a pretty video, but it's just an interesting one. I definitely want your thoughts and comments. We all have different tastes. So the problem is, I know some of you will say, you should really get this tent and that tent. There's great tents, but they weigh close to what my triplex is. A great tent. It weighs 24 ounces and have 0 complaints about it, except for being big. So I have that tent if that's what I need to use, and I don't need to buy anything. But I'm trying to go smaller. So there's smaller tents, but they weigh the same as my triplex. So in that case, it's not going to save any weight. So there's no sense in buying something to get to have the same weight, except for maybe it's a little bit smaller. So if I'm going to carry the same weight, I might as well use the condo or the mansion, I call it. So that's about it. All right, now we're going to try to get something to eat before it gets dark. Good morning, good morning. It is 7 o'clock a.m. I have to work a little later this morning, so I got up early. Plus, I only have a mile to go to the car. So, Yeah, so what's my first impressions? It's a little mixed, to be honest with you. I think it's gonna work. I think it's also, like I said yesterday, I'm used to a triplex, which is way too big for me, but I really enjoy it. And one of the benefits is not having to have my head and feet hitting the side walls of the tent and getting lots of condensation on me. Last night was actually, it wasn't supposed to rain at all, but last night was perfect because it started raining, as you probably saw, as I was setting up the tent. So everything was kind of wet, but that's a good thing because that's real world. You know, when it's dry and perfect, every tent works great. So yeah, it didn't rain very much, but it was a very damp evening, you know, very damp. So the tent was very wet. And then there was a lot of condensation on the inside, which is standard for a single wall tent. So, you know, I've had already a couple CPAX tents, so I'm used to it. It doesn't bother me, but I was very tight. So I guess the only thing I say is I fit in it perfectly. I fit it perfectly. But there's not so much extra room, you know, to do anything. But as I said yesterday, you know, I'm just weighing what's important in a tent for me, you know, and that's what you guys have to do for you. But you know, really, I slept really well. I have a new Thermarest X Therm mattress. I'm sleeping warm now. I was very warm and comfortable last night. And I think what I'll do with this tent, if I do get it, is I use a trash compactor liner for my backpack. I slid that over my feet. So I think not only does it give you an extra layer to keep your feet warm, but to keep them dry. But I will say, you know, the very end of the plastic bag on the end of my quilt was touching the wall, and the angle of the wall that comes down, and the bag was wet, which is okay. But my foot box was quite a bit wet, surprisingly. So I don't know if this is, I didn't feel moisture. It's kind of weird. I didn't feel like the moisture was going through the bag. So I don't know if maybe I created condensation with my warm feet or whatever, but my feet never felt cold or wet or anything. I just have to dry out the bag today. So that's it. You know, a lot of nights are not going to, most nights are not going to be wet like that where it's raining and stuff like that. So I won't have to worry as much about that. Just a light amount of condensation. So I'm definitely, besides that, I had plenty of room for my stuff. I told you I have half the stuff I used to have. So that really helps. It's just learning to organize it. I have a system in my triplex, which is a mansion, where to put everything so I can find it in the middle of the night. And so I had a little issue with that last night, but it's not because of anything except for me not being used to the tent, you know, and the shape and all that. So that's it. I mean, I definitely think it'll work. I fit in it just right. The one thing I can't, you know, I have to sit up in the center. I can't just sit up and change clothes or whatever in the edges because it's too low. That's about it. We'll film a little bit the rest of this hike to the car. Thanks for watching. I know it was just mostly talking, but that's the purpose of this video. It wasn't a gear video, but more about a thoughts video and rethinking things. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and like and hit the notification bell. And we have a couple more videos coming out pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. All right, let's finish up this hike. Hey guys, Marmalade here, of course, and it's a couple days after I filmed the video you're watching, and I've had some time to reflect, talk to 3 or 4 friends about my feelings, positive, negative, about the tent and the tarp situation, all that. And when it comes down to it, to kind of end this series about the tarp and getting lighter, I've actually decided to not go with the Plex Solo that you watch in this video. It's a great tent, and I'm super jealous because that's the tent I would love to have, but when it comes down to it, I do not fit in it. When I was honest with myself and thought about it, and I was so glad that it rained that night that I used it, because like I said earlier, when the tents are dry, any tent, even a Walmart tent, will be great. But it's what does it do in weather? And it was very damp, which is normal for single wall tents. But I was just in it like this, like I'm a side sleeper. I'd flip over, and I was just literally within inches of all the walls. And it was really hard. I sat up to pack my backpack, and I always pack in the tent. I'm gonna do a video on that, by the way, about how I pack up and how I get out of camp quickly. But I'm brushing against, I had a beanie on and a jacket, but my beanie and jacket were getting wet, and it just was too tight for me. I just wish I wasn't so tall. But so in thinking about it, I told you before, they are more roomy. I know some of you guys are going to try to give me ideas on tents. The the problem is I want to stay light, and so when they're lighter and smaller, like the Plex Solo, I don't fit in them. There's bigger one-man tents, but with the poles, if they're freestanding and that kind of stuff, they end up being as much, if not way over, what I'm already carrying in my triplex. So in the end, I'm going lighter and lighter and lighter, but I've gained 4 ounces on my air mattress, going from an X Light to an X Therm by Thermarest. So I'm gaining 4 ounces to be warmer, and then I've decided for now to keep the triplex. This could change at any time, of course, but right now I'm going to keep it. It's about 23 or 24 ounces, and the lightest version that I was trying of the Plex Solo is 13.9 ounces. So what is that? 14.6. So it's about, I don't even know, 8 to 10 ounces heavier to have my triplex. But for me, I love the tent. Obviously I'd like a smaller tent and be able to fit in more spots, but I've been always able to find a spot when I'm camping and setting up. And the triplex is smaller than my tarp setup, so that's good when it comes to finding spaces. So for now, thank you for watching. The point of this was rethinking things. I've given you hopefully some good thoughts and ideas about the tarp. I am selling the tarp, the ground sheet, and the bug net if anybody's interested in any parts of those. I've got it online on a couple sites too. But it gave you some ideas in case you want to try that. I gave you some ideas with the Plex Solo, and in the end, what I have is the best for me right now. And guess what? It saves me a lot of money, as I earn money to go hike this summer and try to finish the PCT. But it keeps me from having to buy another tent, so that's good. So thank you for following along, and watch the last bit of clips to the end of this video when I finish this hike for the day. And thanks for watching. We'll definitely see you down the trail.